Okay, let's do this. So we live in an age of anxiety, but our particular struggle today is what Paul Tillich calls spiritual anxiety, or the struggle with meaninglessness. Why might this be the case, and how did we get here? Well, the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, he introduced the idea of the death of God in his 1882 book, The Gay Science. Now, the death of God, while a deeply Christian concept in some sense, is also deeply offensive to a lot of people. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use the idea of the death of God as an apt metaphor for what it feels like to live in a meaningless world. Now, the way that Nietzsche describes it, this isn't some sort of triumphant, atheistic celebration. Rather, the death of God is a deep tragedy. In fact, Nietzsche casts a madman to proclaim it. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of the deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods, simply to become worthy of it? I'm reminded of the novel Lord of the Flies, in which an airplane crashes and all the adults have died and only children remain. But the children can't accept that there isn't an authoritative figure alive on the island, somebody to referee when they fight with each other, somebody to curb their more violent impulses. But it doesn't take the children long to discover that they're free to do whatever they want to do, and they quickly descend into violence and chaos. The sad picture painted by William Golding seems to be that without an authority figure to hold the moral world together, that we're lost. But not everybody who experiences spiritual anxiety does so. From Nietzsche's unique brand of atheism, religious people are subject to this experience as well. The philosopher Charles Taylor, he says that we face spiritual anxiety daily by merely participating in a modern liberal democracy. You know, in America, one of our most cherished freedoms is the freedom of religion. But in practice, this means that I daily come into contact with people whose beliefs and practices differ radically from my own. And, you know, I'm usually able to make it through the day. I say to myself, oh, my neighbor Jim, he's a nice guy. I deeply respect him. His beliefs may be different from mine, and maybe he does some things which I would never do, but, you know, he goes his way and I go mine. And it's this self-talk of tolerance that helps me to cope. But not every day. You know, it can take a toll to give consideration to somebody who I otherwise believe is living in ignorance or sin or delusion. An important character in Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov, he says that we are not content to bow down before God as individuals. Rather, we insist that the whole world bows down together with us, that we bow down at the same time. It's a lot less confusing that way. So far I've been talking about spiritual anxiety in largely theoretical terms, but that's not what's important. What matters is, what is it like to experience this? What is the phenomena of this anxiety? Well, in my work with clients, I've seen it in one of three ways. First, a deep sense of emptiness. You know, I've worked really hard, I've achieved some goal, but it doesn't fulfill me. Second, boredom. You know, I don't know what to do. and activities that present themselves to me, they don't compel. Third, depression. I don't experience pleasure in my life because I don't see life as meaningful. And rather than get up and go out there and face the absence of meanings, I'll choose to stay in bed. So emptiness, boredom, depression. That's what it feels like to face a meaningless world. Well, in my work with clients, I've seen a lot of people struggle with meaninglessness, but they don't have a language to describe what they're going through. And their loved ones, though well-intentioned, they say things that are frankly hurtful. Things like, what right do you have to be depressed? Or, I made it through it, why can't you? Or, have you just tried being grateful? So not only are people suffering, but then they're made to feel guilty for asking these questions. But I understand why loved ones react the way that they do, because what do we know about an existential crisis? That it triggers existential anxiety in other people. That if I'm going to accept and see that you experience your world as groundless, then I start to feel the earth moving underneath my feet. So I'm a mental health counselor, and unfortunately I've seen this same attitude reflected in some of the language of my colleagues. They'll say, what you're experiencing is a mental illness, and I can fix that. Now, I have a real problem with pathologizing the human experience. The question of meaning is common to all of humanity. It's something that we all have to grapple with. And our meanings aren't naturally given. If they were, then we couldn't experience our lives as meaningful. It would just be life. You can't have light without experiencing darkness, and you can't have fullness without experiencing emptiness. I need to make an important caveat here, and it's this. Mental illness is real, and it's killing people every day. And if you're struggling with mental illness, know that it's a disease, but there is help for you with good therapy, with possible good med management, and good healthy support. That may be the most important message to get out there today. But I also want to maintain that there's a distinction between the mental illness of anxiety and what I'm referring to in this video as existential or spiritual anxiety. The first needs to be corrected through therapy, but existential anxiety is normal and even ennobling. So many people are familiar with Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He put meaning at the center of his therapy. And in his famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, he predicts a coming tidal wave of clients to psychotherapy in search of a meaning to their lives. Now, a lot of Frankl's colleagues thought that this approach to therapy was illicit. You don't go to a doctor to find the meaning to life. You should go to your rabbi or your priest or your imam. But Frankl disagreed, and so do I, for a number of reasons. First, meaning is something that everybody's in search of, religious as well as non-religious people. And frankly, our society is becoming more and more secular. And where are people without religious faith supposed to go if they are trying to figure out what the meaning of their lives is? Second, spiritual anxiety sometimes is too hot for a religious environment. I'm thinking of the religious mother who lost her son. She's angry at God for not saving her boy's life, but when she brings that anger to church, well-meaning people, they give her pat Sunday school answers, but that only infuriates her more. If anything, her existential crisis is more poignant than the secular mother, because she believes in a being both powerful enough and yet unwilling to save her son's life. therapy is a very good venue for her to go and feel that anger and work through her grief. So I'm a mental health counselor, and I see a need in my community to open up space to fill these existential questions without well-meaning people rushing in with ready-made answers. That I want the space to struggle, that I want the space to feel the weight of it. So I take courage from Frankl's diagnosis as well as his prescription. He says that when I'm suffering, what I need to find is a meaning to my suffering. But he also says that when my answers aren't satisfying, when nothing seems to make sense, when I struggle under the weight of my own life, that I can still have a meaningful experience in what he calls unavoidable suffering. You know, in Frankl's darkest moments in Auschwitz, he took courage in simply surviving his experience. And sometimes that's all we can do, is just survive. Just keep going, just keep moving. And that can be enough. If this video resonates with you, if you find yourself in the grip of an existential crisis, then I want you to accept that part of yourself. I want you to affirm that part of yourself. Because it takes a lot of courage to stand up in the darkness, raise your hand and say what nobody wants to say. And it's the I don't know the answers. Or if you know somebody in the grips of an existential crisis, I want you to share this video with them. Let it be a wink, as if to say, I see you, I see your courage, and I accept you as you are. You're under no obligation from me to wrap this up quickly. Simply put, I love you. So I hope you liked this video. I've included a link to books in the description below that have informed my thinking on existential anxiety. Please leave a comment. What is it that triggers your existential anxiety? And also, what is it that informs your sense of purpose? Thanks for watching.